Here, we discuss and review individual sides of record albums we have grown to appreciate and hope you will too. Welcome to The Sideshow.
Okay, welcome to another edition of The Sideshow. And taking charge today on a memorial episode will be Mike. Mike, why don't you tell everybody what we're going to be talking about today?
Thanks, Mark. Today, in honor of the recent passing of Ozzy Osbourne, we're going to talk about Black Sabbath's Master of Reality Side 1.
Nice.
And to be candid, I mean, I don't spend a lot of time these days cranking the Black Sabbath. But I'll tell you, and we were talking about this earlier before we went on the air. One of the first albums that I got back in junior high school when we got a turntable and a stereo, an actual stereo, as opposed to like the old record player when we were little kids where you could play 45s and stuff like that. And then we joined the Columbia Record Club and blah, all that kind of stuff, which was you did back in those days. And one of the very first albums I got, because I was hard rock was one of the types of music that I was interested in at that time. Mm-hmm. And so Black Sabbath, Master of Reality, was really one of the first LPs I got when I started listening to rock music. And I've got a CD version of it. I got a CD of Black Sabbath Paranoid as well. And actually when the summer between high school and college, which was 1981, was when Ozzy Osbourne went out on really his first solo tour. Mm-hmm. And his first, real solo album, Blizzard of Oz, was the album with Crazy Train mm-hmm. and I Don't Know. Mm-hmm. And a good friend of ours, mutual friend of ours, and I went and saw him in Green Bay. At the old Brown County Arena back in the festival seating days. Opening act before they were as big as they became eventually was Def Leppard.
Yeah.
And it was a good concert. It really was. Randy Rhoads played guitar for him, who was a well-regarded kind of heavy metal guitar mm-hmm. player. And Ozzy Osbourne went on to become sort of a celebrity, beyond the confines of the music industry, perhaps a little on the cartoonish side, if not a lot on the cartoonish side.
Yeah.
But Ozzy Osbourne, I think, is really, as a solo artist, was really more of the MTV generation than the pure classic rock era. And while songs like Crazy Train and Mama I'm Coming Home, I mean, are sort of big major hits that have permeated the popular culture, but in my opinion, the real contribution that Ozzy Osbourne made to music, if that's what we want to call it, was with Black Sabbath. Mm-hmm. And so I think that a fitting tribute to his legacy is the original Black Sabbath, and I think that this was really the high point of Black Sabbath. Which it's only their third album, and it came out in 1971. Their first album, I believe, was 1969. Paranoid, their second album, came out a little bit later. But this is where I think they hadn't gotten to the sort of self-caricature point, which they did pretty quickly. And so that's why I've selected this piece of music to talk about in regards to Ozzy Osbourne.
Well, I would totally agree. It's interesting. By the time you went and saw that concert, I think I was in the service already, so I didn't get a chance to go to that one with you. And then we were entering that MTV phase much more, and you can picture some of Ozzy's albums. Very theatrical. More costumey. The vampire like. Just there was more theatrical stuff outside the music that was added. That kind of you know is why I put Ozzy as a solo performer in more of that MTV group. Still some very, classic music that was very popular, still gets played today, regularly covered. When we go to see these bands in the beer tents and stuff, they all play Crazy Train because
Yeah.
everybody likes it. That and Enter Sandman, you're always going to hear them, right? By these people getting everybody to get involved. So very good music, but just kind of entered a different phase. You didn't have that same type of theatrics around the music. The music spoke for itself with Black Sabbath, with just the whole notion of, look, movies can be scary. Why can't music be scary, right? And these types of themes and whatever that are explored, and we don't necessarily need a scary album cover. What we want is the music to have to invoke certain kinds of feelings and that type of thing. And Black Sabbath, I mean, they started doing it first. I mean, just at kind of at scale and well. They just kind of enter. So I would totally agree. If you really want to look, to focus where the impact of Ozzy Osbourne was, it's that early Black Sabbath that really stands out.
And I mean, an '80s metal was different than '70s heavy
Yes.
metal, and
Yes.
I think that and people can debate, what is quintessential heavy metal, and but there is certainly no question that Black Sabbath as a band in their original incarnation is just inextricably connected to the concept of heavy metal.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
more so than any other band, even if they weren't the purest form of heavy metal.
Yeah.
They are. If I had to say one band, what kind of is the quintessence of heavy metal, I would say Black Sabbath. And they started out in the late '60s. They were from the band. All the band members were from Birmingham, England, and which is also where both Robert Plant and John Bonham of Led Zeppelin are originally from. And like a lot of bands in the mid to late '60s in England, they were a blues band. They played blues music. And then eventually kind of refined that into something that was a little bit more their own. There are four members of the band: it's guitar, bass, drummer, Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, and Bill Ward playing those instruments. And then Ozzy was the lead vocalist. So
Yeah.
same sort of Led Zeppelin format. And now they didn't. I don't. You can't say that Black Sabbath invented heavy metal. I think arguably, the first real heavy metal song was "You Really Got Me" by the Kinks. And that wasn't. They were not a heavy metal band,
No.
the Kinks, but that just sort of that power chord where they were just sort of they were pounding as opposed to playing.
Yeah.
But I think that sort of simple, very direct, hard hitting power chords was the first thing that comes to my mind is that song
Yeah.
by the Kinks. Now,
Yeah.
after that, there was Cream, with and also Jimi Hendrix to some extent, heavy guitar, distortion. And I don't think that Cream and Hendrix, I wouldn't refer to those artists as heavy metal artists, but that they were putting out heavy guitar, some plotting tempos and distortion and things of that nature. Uh, uh, and
And as well as this notion, I'm not a guitar player myself, so I don't even understand some of these concepts. But these notions of down tuning or drop tuning the guitar that gives it a deeper, and the chords are just these darker, deeper feel, simply based on the way that they, a certain way of tuning the guitars. Again, I've never played the guitar myself, but this was experimenting with these types of things, and the distortion, like you've talked about, and the ability to mix and record with certain types of volumes and depth and sound that were brought together by a number of different artists to be able to kind of create this heavy, this heavy sound.
well, and for I mean, they definitely for this album, both the guitarist Tony Iommi and the bass player down tuned their instruments as you
Yeah.
describe, they may have done it on their earlier material, but they definitely did it on this album. And in part, that was because the guitarist had Tony Iommi had injured his fingers somehow, and just the not quite as tight a feel on the action of the fretboard was it was easier for him to play that way, and the effect is as you describe. But by the time that they released their first album, which they basically just recorded their set, by the time they'd gotten around to that in 1969, there was sort of more of a doom and gloom aspect that had come to the music, a more gothic sort of tone behind where they were coming from. And their first album is just called Black Sabbath, and the first song on side one of their first album is called Black Sabbath. And if you put that on now, most people like us, if you put on their first album and listen to that first track, you're very quickly going to think, this is Spinal Tap.
Yeah.
I mean, this is where Spinal Tap got their some of their ideas, and I don't say that. I say that seriously. I mean, it was that is the original Spinal Tap, and it just had this dark, sludgy, demonic sort of feel to it, and and it's really about that simple. I mean, there's not. It's not really worth talking about the nuances of their first album, but if you listen to the beginning of the first track on their first album, Spinal Tap, which isn't necessarily a compliment, but that's what it was. And now their second album had a lot more substance to it, and they had a number of radio songs that not on top 40 radio, but stuff, the song Paranoid, the second album, which came out also in 1971, early 1971. The album was called Paranoid, and the song Paranoid was a good song that got a fair amount of airplay. The song Iron Man, War Pigs, I mean, kind of classic Black Sabbath stuff. Still a little dark, Paranoid and Iron Man, certainly, Paranoid is kind of self-explanatory, about not just paranoia, but mental illness and whatnot. I mean, Iron Man, is sort of describing this Harrison Bergeron-like character, and War Pigs was an anti-war song. And a lot of critics will point to Paranoid as being sort of, that was the high point, or that was Black Sabbath's best outing. But my money is placed on their third album, also released later in 1971, which is Master of Reality. And it took a lot of the ingredients from the previous album, very riff heavy, and just sort of, in my opinion, kind of tightened them up a little bit. And it doesn't have necessarily the same raucous, raw intensity of Paranoid, but it just does a better job of putting it out. What Black Sabbath, given their relatively simple format, was able to do, and it also kind of got away from the sort of cartoonish, demonic lyrics. The tone of the music still had that dark malevolence, but the lyrics were not. They were a little more, and everything is relative here, but they were in some ways a little more serious. Than some of their previous stuff.
Well, and you can come upon a concept which we've talked about many bands that struggled to find what is this, what kind of music are we going to make, right? We play music well together. To your point, some of the early incarnations of this group of people were blues bands, and they didn't, the idea of, sitting in their garages when they were 13 years old, dreaming of playing heavy metal is not how this came to pass, right? It's like they were still, as they were forming as musicians, as real bands, trying to figure out what they were going to play. And the notion of, we can have this type of variety in movies, for example, of different types of music. We should be able to do the same thing with music. Was more of an idea than something that had been really thought out. To your point, let's make it really dark and heavy riffs. Let's bring in the occult. Let's bring in, these kind of things, make this as dark as possible. And you can start doing it. And then over time, you can begin to do it better, to make better music that still continues to drive on a similar type of theme or concept. And I would say that, is really what happened here, where I'd agree with you about their first album. I mean, if you like Black Sabbath, you listen to the music and it's there, but they're if you've just watched the movie Spinal Tap and you put on that first album, it is hard not to have a little bit of a smirk on your face while you're listening to it. And I do think that they really began to center in and get better with some very good material and songs on Paranoid. And by the time they got to Master Reality, which we've seen with a lot of bands, now they've had commercial success, which they did get with Paranoid, right? They got buzz with Black Sabbath. These guys are different. This is a different sound. Commercial success with Paranoid. And so now the record company is willing to put some resources into the production. I mean, their first two albums were both made very quickly. I think they did. Yeah. To your point, they just basically came in and played their set. A little more time on Paranoid, but Master Reality was the first time that they actually got to spend time in the studio working on an album. Interestingly enough, they also were introduced to what it means to be a successful rock and roll band. So they were also given a suitcase full of money to purchase drugs with, which provided some entertainment for them while they were working. And I think that is when you get that production resources from the record company, that can also help. And I think that you see that it's just a more brought together album in Master Reality. Even though Paranoid, especially for real, diehard Black Sabbath fans, is just an incredibly powerful and solid album.
The first album was recorded in one day.
Yeah.
They just had a full day of studio time, which to them was a lot of time. And, most of the tracks are recorded live, and, live meaning live in the studio where all the musicians are playing at the same time.
Yeah.
And there were relatively limited overdubs on the first album. But through all three of the first albums, of their first three albums.
Yeah.
Their eponymous debut, Paranoid, and Master of Reality, guitar, bass, drums, vocals.
Yeah.
No keyboards.
Yeah.
So just straightforward, no fucking around. Yeah. That's what we're doing. And though the lyrics are not quite as schlocky, in my opinion, by the time we get to Master of Reality. One thing that Black Sabbath didn't sing about, sex.
Yeah.
You know, we've talked about some album sides where the singer had sex on the brain.
Yes.
Black Sabbath, they didn't sing about sex.
Yeah.
So you've got straightforward music, straight and a straightforward approach to whatever it is they were doing. And you mentioned the fact that they had more opportunity to dabble around with controlled substances. That happens to play very nicely into the first track on side one of Master of Reality. But before we get to that, this is one of the first records I got. I don't know where it went. I don't have my copy anymore. So Mark, would you be so kind as to show us
another one that was potentially ripped off by a roommate or something like that? But
could have been.
Anyway, this is pretty straightforward cover. I'm trying to got to move a little bit because the Master Reality is it's just kind of what do you call it? Not imprinted, but
yeah, you can feel it. You can't see it.
Feel it. That's right. Straight for just Black Sabbath Master Reality, and then on the back, you've got the lyrics to the song that are in there, and nothing really inside. In fact, just even the standard record company sleeve on the inside that they put out on just about all their albums. So nothing much aside from the lyrics there.
Maybe my copy ended up in your stacks. I mean, we lived together for 3 years.
It very well could be. I do believe this one came from a garage sale though, but that's
in any event. I got the CD, so it's not a problem.
Yes. Yeah.
In any case, the first song on side one is titled Sweet Leaf. And believe it or not, Sweet Leaf, it's about marijuana. It's about smoking pot. And apparently someone presented the guitarist, Tony Iommi, in the studio while they were working on this album with a nice fat joint. Mm-hmm. And when he fired it up, and apparently the tapes were rolling, it resulted in a coughing fit. And at some point they figured that they were going to use this coughing jag from Tony Iommi from the studio to start off a song about marijuana. So why don't we just listen to the beginning and so people can get a sense of this song, and we'll talk about it a little more on the other side. All right. Well, there you heard it. You heard the coughing, and then and then that just dun 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 dun. And there you have it. And that's kind of one of the quintessential Black Sabbath riffs. It's simple, it's sludgy. You can hear there's just a heaviness that comes along with it. A music critic, I don't recall who it was, but I copped this idea from them. Described Black Sabbath as sounding like a brontosaurus in a tar pit, and that's that's kind of
Yeah.
what this song sounds like.
Yeah.
It's sort of like you're playing this music, but it's almost like when you're having a dream and you need to like run somewhere to get something, but suddenly your legs are made of lead.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just has this. There's something that's slowing it down.
Yeah.
And that in part was the down tuning that we talked about earlier, and it's just and so I mean, just this album starts off with a riff that kind of it is a classic Black Sabbath sound
Oh yeah.
and riff.
Yeah. Yeah. You can if you're connecting or meeting first time with someone and they're yeah, I'm a big Black Sabbath fan or whatever. If you just go they will probably come back with. I mean, it is a well known start to a song by people that listen to Black Sabbath.
And so I mean, you really just in this one riff, you've kind of got the template for Black Sabbath. Maybe oversimplifying things a little bit. I mean, I am oversimplifying it, but if like you say, when some people think of Black Sabbath, they think of the song Paranoid. Some people think of Iron Man, but just when someone says, "Oh, what do you think of Black Sabbath?" The sound that's going to go through my mind is the coughing and that opening riff of Sweet Leaf, probably.
Yeah.
Because the first time I ever heard Black Sabbath was when this album came from the Columbia Record Club and tore the shrink wrap off and popped it onto the turntable, and that's what I heard.
Yeah, yeah, that was the first sound. I also think that there's something, and this is not so much just for this album, but for all of Black Sabbath. I mean, we started out talking about Ozzy. I mean, he had a vocal sound that was made. I can't imagine him singing a blues song, of some type. He had a depth, which you did get in blues. Deep voice was there, but there was a projection, kind of an anger or an urgency that came out as he sang, and very unique vocalist. It's very easy to detect a song where it's either Black Sabbath or Ozzy Osbourne. He had a very strong vocal performance as a part of these, and you hear that in all these songs where he's singing, but especially here, because the very first vocal that you hear on this song is that "all right now," and it is absolutely Ozzy, right, in him coming out with that. Comes in to kind of drive this. So it's just a great song.
And there's a little bit more to it than just the riff. And there's a guitar, if you want to. Well, it's a guitar break in this, and this was in the early '70s, and the '60s weren't all that far in the rearview mirror at that point. Let's just listen to a little bit of the guitar break, about a minute or so, and then talk a little more on the other side.
Okay, let's hear it.
All right. no, that was just kind of chaotic. I think is really the
Yeah.
only the word that you can describe there. And I mean, like a song that came later in the '70s, the Ram Jam, Black Betty.
Yeah.
You know, that song wouldn't be like it came out to be if it hadn't. I'll bet you those guys listen to
Oh,
this
yep.
album.
They were some Black Sabbath fans.
And it just it was it's it, you know I you listen a lot of this, I listen to stuff, like King Crimson or Yes or Led Zeppelin or Deep Purple, where you've got musicians who are focused on, I mean, in different things in those different bands, but
Yeah.
there's a sort of focus and a precision that sometimes is mixed with a little wildness, but it's just this is something that's kind of unique
Yeah.
in terms of it's music. It's something where they're breaking away from the regular, verse chorus, and it's not particularly good,
Hmm.
but I mean, for lack of a better way of putting it, but
Yeah.
it's just it fits.
Yeah. Yeah.
It fits just the vibe, and like I say, sort of, this kind of nonsense is kind of what bridged the gap between some of the nuttier extravagances of the '60s and some of the sort of more bloated excesses of the '70s.
Yeah.
And that makes it sound a lot more profound than it really is. But I mean, it just where Black Sabbath fits in the whole calculus. That's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And this, you know, there, first of all, on this particular, song, looking at people trying to dissect and, what are they talking about? Is this about like a love song to someone? And you said it straight out. This is about weed. This is about marijuana. This is about smoking pot. And, and their love of smoking pot and their love for weed. But done, a lot of people, a lot of songs about getting high, and a lot of mellower songs and more peaceful and let's ride out the buzz type songs. They're asking
Yeah.
for a different approach in
Yeah,
in this particular song.
This ain't Puff the Magic Dragon.
No, this isn't. We can approach this a little differently. But you're right, and I especially like, you've mentioned a couple times a little bit, and it is the wrong term, a term like sloppiness or muckiness to the song, because it does work. It when you put it together, right? It does work. Which rock and roll, there's been a lot of that. If you could just focus on John Bonham's drums, he might have had a sloppiness to his drums, but when you put it with it worked right. It was exactly what that song needed, and that's really what you have here. That's the effect they were looking for. That kind of feeling. And what does it lead to? It leads to a little bit of uneasiness in the listener, an inability just to settle down and relax and listen to the song. There's a tension it worked, right? And they certainly achieved that here with that very unique Sabbath sound. And there's plenty of bands since then that have come around with a heavier sound and whatever. But this was when it wasn't so common. To your point, they weren't the first, but they did put it out there in a pretty good way.
Yeah. So in any case, that's the opening track, Sweet Leaf, and talking about drug use. I mean, were they promoting it or whatever? I mean, the last lyrics of the song are, "Oh yeah, baby, come on now, try it out. Oh yeah."
They seem to be advocating it. Yeah.
They were saying you should do it, but in any case, moving on to the second track. The second track is called "After Forever," and I think musically this is probably the most substantial track on the side. I don't think it's the best track necessarily, but it might be. And one notable aspect of this song is the lyrics are certainly not demonic. I mean, the lyrics are overtly Christian.
Yeah.
And advocating Christianity with the same zeal as the previous track advocated smoking pot.
Yeah.
And and we don't need to dwell on the lyrics. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. The song starts out with kind of some otherworldly noise, kind of consistent with the doom and gloom version of Black Sabbath. And then you get some lead guitar that's a little bit different than a lot of Black Sabbath. It's got a clean sound to it.
It's like a more of a standard 70s kind of rock group. But I almost felt like I was is this like Free Ride that we're listening to? I mean, it's like a flowing kind of 70s kind of rock jam that comes along.
Let's listen to the beginning of the song,
Yeah.
and we can talk a little bit about it on the other side.
Have you ever thought about your soul? Can it be saved? Or perhaps you think that when you are dead, you just stay in your grave. Is God just a thought within your head, or is it part of you? Is Christ just a name that you read in the book when you were in school?
All right, you hear the beginning of the song, sort of soundtrack where the creature's head is going to start to loom. But then this just lead guitar comes in, and it just has a brighter, cleaner sound. And the drums and the bass come in and whatnot. But then next thing you know, you get into this darker, more malevolent riff-a-thon, Black Sabbath, sludgier, that evokes that sort of Prince of Darkness sort of role. But the lyrics, have you ever thought about your soul? Can it be saved? Is God just a thought within your head, or is he part of you? I mean, they're pretty Christian.
Yes. At the same time, though, I think they do a really interesting job of, they're talking about, well, how does someone who doesn't believe in God think? And then of course there is a way to be saved from that. But I mean, words like, would you like to see the Pope on the end of a rope? Do you think he's a fool? And of course, now if you just look at those lyrics, but they're speaking to someone who hasn't been saved, and and they're going to present them with a solution as a part of this song. But they sure do a very creative way of explaining the point of view of someone who wants nothing to do with Christianity. So very interesting lyrics. It isn't just, hey, pray and repent and you'll be saved. They come at it in a very Black Sabbath kind of way.
Yeah, and I think one thing, the lyrics certainly appear that the lyricist, and I think that Bill Ward, the drummer, may have been the primary lyricist for the band. But regardless of which member of the band or which members of the band wrote the lyrics, they appear to be a sincere expression of Christian faith.
Yes.
Despite despite being couched in this Black Sabbath song.
Yeah.
And so I mean, it and for that reason, in an odd way, it carries a certain credibility.
Yeah.
Now there's more going on musically, instrumentally in this track than there are in some of the others. Yeah. And you basically heard the kind of the structure of the basic verses, but there are actually two different bridges in this song, one of which contains lyrics and one of which doesn't. And let's listen to some clips of each of them, one after the other, and then we can talk on the other side about them both. All right. Well, the first one there, you just had this very straightforward, kind of bum, bum, ba-dum, dun it, bum, bum, ba-dum, dum. And then there's the lyrics, they're singing there. But it's almost like more conventional cock rockish than Sabbathy in sound. Yeah. But then, the second one is it harkens back a little bit more to the guitar break in Sweet Leaf, a little more chaotic, a little less standard, maybe in my opinion. But in any case, you've got a song that starts out with sort of some kind of more synthesized type sound, a clean lead guitar intro, the typical, sludgy Sabbath riff, and then two different guitar-oriented bridges, one with lyrics and one without. And so there's a certain amount of shit that they're doing instrumentally on this track. And I'm not holding up Black Sabbath as we got to look at these intricate instrumental creativity, but they're doing shit here.
Yeah, and this shows that progression from the band that, to your point, went into the studio and in one day just played the songs that were go on the record. Four guys, here's our song, and put it in. This is just, it's more engineered. It's more, there's a lot more going on in this song than just in there's very heavy riffs. There's, these very focused and, topical lyrics. That's all still there. There's just more there as well. There's more music that is there and a part of this song.
For people who, I mentioned King Crimson and Yes. Mm-hmm. And, for the sort of people that, as I am, like to occasionally immerse myself in that sort of eggheady shit. This is very different than that. I mean, and so I don't want any of my comments to suggest that I would look at these different artists as being similar, but it's still rock and roll. Yeah. We got drums, bass, guitar, and someone singing, and so there's going to be overlap, between a lot of different artists that fall underneath the big umbrella of rock music. And while Black Sabbath may be one of the schlockier incarnations It's there's stuff there. There is
Yeah.
stuff there to appreciate, and I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that there are a lot of people that are like me in many respects in terms of their taste in music who are going to kind of look down their nose at Black Sabbath or Ozzy Osbourne or both, and I think that is a little bit on the closed-minded side.
Yeah.
I never bought an Ozzy Osbourne, like Blizzard of Oz or Diary of a Madman or any of his. I never bought an Ozzy Osbourne album or compact disc, and the only albums I got by Black Sabbath were Paranoid and this one, Master of Reality. So I'm not saying we've got this major force in music that can't be ignored, but I think that is an open-minded rock and roller will find things to appreciate in all of the primary songs on this side.
Oh yeah. I would totally agree. And it's a different sound than a lot of records, but this song, because there's a lot in it, it does incorporate some things that I would consider more for the time more mainstream type rock and roll, or what would become classic rock, that is there above and beyond the this metal or heavy metal aspect that they were started to come out with. So I tell you, entertaining song. You're not going to fall asleep listening to After Forever.
No, and it's not one of Black Sabbath's better known songs.
No.
But I think it's one of the high points, certainly on this side, and I think generally in their early career. The third track on side one, it's a short instrumental. It's called Embryo, and it's 28 seconds long. So why don't we just listen to it, and then we can talk about it.
Yeah, okay.
Now, okay, there we go. I don't know what the point was. Some interesting guitar playing, had kind of an almost like Chinese or Japanese kind of flavor to the, that angular banjos kind of sound. But I mean, it's 20 seconds long. There's not really long enough to really, would create a leitmotif or whatever you want to call it. And if you get on the internet, you'll get all sorts of things like, oh, well, this was really the intro to the next song, Children of the Grave, because an embryo is a child before it's born, and like that sort of, armchair wisdom. But one thing that may be the case, is that in England, and there's some other records that came out where there's songs where they'll have the title of the song, and then they'll say including, and they'll have subparts. And apparently for publishing rights or royalties or some other music publishing esoterica, more tracks meant more royalties or something like that. And so maybe that's why they did it. And like one short track and one really long track is the same as two tracks. At least that's the way it was looked at. And so I'm just going on some things that I've read. I don't know to what extent this is true, but do you have a better explanation?
Well, there's two things. First of all, I mean, we're talking about even with this track, this side only has 4 songs. and not overly long songs either. I mean, we're talking 5 minutes and change for all the other songs on this album. I mean, this side would have clocked in at like 15 minutes and some, had they, so a little bit more filler and a few more tracks, another track or two. I think just from the notion of we've got to have an album here, we've got to have enough music to create an album. So, that. I also think it could have been, kind of an intro, but if you listen to this song and the next song without a break, I mean, pretty dramatic differences. I think that they just needed almost like a palate cleanser between, if you look at where the value of this song sits. We talked about this was a pretty, well constructed song that we just got done listening to in After Forever, and the final song, which we're about to talk about, Children of the Grave, is also kind of interesting, and but different. I think kind of a palate cleanser in between the two of those. And then my last thought is that yes, Spinal Tap, we needed to have the Renaissance, kind of feudal jester playing the guitar, piece as a part of the song that they tossed in to have the requisite thing in there. So, and you're all the I see it though, and it functions. It is kind of a palate cleanser between the last two songs on the side, which are kind of similar but kind of different.
And that that explanation probably makes the most sense, and it doesn't really matter. I mean, it does give you an opportunity to sort of take a breath in between what are just, regardless of the nonsense that we're talking about. We're talking about hard rock songs, and maybe just to catch our breath is worthwhile. In any case, it doesn't matter. You've heard it, and that is track. There's not much more to say about the third track,
Embryo.
Embryo. Now the fourth and final track. It's really I think it was one of Black Sabbath's signature songs, and it certainly was when I mentioned the Ozzy Osbourne concert that I saw in 1981, and they closed the set with Children of the Grave, which is the fourth and final track on side one of Master of Reality, and it is it's a song that is clearly Black Sabbath, but it's also a little bit. It's a little different than Sweet Leaf or After Forever. And why don't we listen to the beginning of the track just to give everyone a taste, and we can take it from there. All right. Now, this is much more of kind of a fast rhythmed rock and roll song. Kind of like Paranoid. A little faster. Almost a punk rock type pace rather than the sludgier Black Sabbath. And I love those the tom drums.
They're fantastic here.
There's just and this is a good example of what I'm trying to get at in terms of that Black Sabbath as a band was trying to do a little bit more. I mean, this is not Spinal Tap. I mean, this is good hard rockin' music, and just those toms. Those toms
they're moving back and forth across the stereo in there while it's going on. It's just great. It's great. It's fun.
And I mean, I can remember from the concert, it was it's a rocker, and then they came back for an encore and did Paranoid, and so I mean, really strong close to that concert, which is why I have fond memories of it. But and the Children of the Grave. That has this sort of very gothic, Children of the Corn, but the actual, I think what the lyrics of the song are talking about is that, young people, this is the early 70s, and, the young people are marching in the streets, and they're they want a better world. And I think that what they're eventually getting at is got to figure out a way to get rid of atomic weapons, and that's and if we don't, then the children of today are children of the grave. Must the world live in the shadow of atomic fear? Is one of the lines in the song, and so while the Children of the Grave sort of has this, kind of a cross between something and Night of the Living Dead, is sort of the image that you get, but that's not really what the song is about. Let's not let it come to that.
Yeah. I mean, my first impression with this always is when we decide kind of what we're going to talk about on these podcasts, I sit and toss the album on and listen to it first and foremost. And, when I got to this song, it started that kind of intro, and I had to start smiling, just sitting here and listening to it, and your foot gets, it's a great, and like I said, I think it's fun. It's fun to listen to. I will say, we just played that clip at the beginning. After the podcast is over, people should go and listen to the song "Call Me" by Blondie, and you're gonna hear some similarities. You brought up, it's almost got like a punk, like new wave type thing. Obviously, well before any of that was being put together, but listen to the similarities between those, that kind of dunk, and then even the lyrics of the first verse that come in, color me of God. I mean, it flows much like that. So we might have had a ripoff in the making there by Blondie, taking Children of the Grave, but it really is, and I agree with you on the lyrics. It's kind of both a caution and a hope for youth. They're trying to do something else. They're trying to do something different, and yet somewhat cautionary about, look, you can't change the world that you were born in, right? You can just change it going forward. So it's an interesting song.
And really, when you get down to brass tacks talking about Black Sabbath, the lyrics aren't really the point.
Yeah.
All these songs, when I first put on for the first time this record when I was, in 7th or 8th grade, I had no idea what Sweet Leaf was about.
Mm-hmm.
Now, 2 years later, I knew what it was about.
Yeah.
But I didn't know Sweet Leaf. It could have been a girl.
Yeah.
I didn't know,
But I thought it was a girl.
But I liked it,
mean,
and After Forever, it was it was obviously a song about Christ, about belief in God
Yeah.
and whatnot. But it didn't have any. I didn't become a religious convert
Yeah.
because of it. I mean, I didn't scoff at
Yeah.
or whatever. But that was didn't and same thing here. You know, the message that the lyrics are trying to send, legitimate as it may be,
Yeah.
well, it's just really not the point. But I think one thing that's clear is these aren't songs about demonic possession or devil
No.
worship.
No.
Even though, you know, like the very beginning of After Forever has that sort of feel to it.
Yeah.
And
There's kind of a spooky ending to, and feel to the end of Children of the Grave. It's kind of as we move out of the song, there's kind of a spooky ending. But I 100% agree with you. And there's a lot of people that, especially say a generation up, that never cared to listen to Black Sabbath, that thought that's all they were singing about, right? Which was just not the case.
yeah. And well, there are also two different instrumental parts of this song that I think are worth talking about. And so why don't we play those two clips, and then we can talk about it a little on the other side.
Sure.
All right. Well, now the first clip there, you know, it starts out with this sort of, it almost sounds like kind of a King Crimson sort of, with that bass and the drums. It's a very syncopated, required some tight playing, at least as tight as Black Sabbath was able to get. And then it drifts into this more like this sort of Spinal Tap-ish, cartoonish doom and gloom. Despite the fact that the lyrics are, I think, more hopeful than not for a sunny outcome. So the music isn't giving way to anything. I mean,
Yeah.
Black Sabbath, as good of a rocker as this is, Black Sabbath is still kind of keeping at least the musical flavor in the Black Sabbath from the very beginning, as the band has been from the very beginning. And the second clip there, because the end of the song, it does get kind of spooky.
Yeah.
And you have the end of the normal riff, and then you get that do 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 do, and then the song, Well, let me back up a little bit, because one aspect of this song is there is just a straight up rock and guitar solo
Yeah.
that we heard that in that second clip. You hear the end of that, and almost like something Richie Blackmore could play.
Yeah.
Just something that just has a different feel than some of the lead guitar up to this point. And boy, I'll tell you, when this was played live, I mean, they were rocking out. When I saw Ozzy Osbourne back in the day.
Yeah.
But then you get that riff that I just kind of caricatured a minute ago, and then it transitions into this. It might as well be a soundtrack from some haunted cemetery in a Hammer horror film.
Yeah.
I mean, you see a sheet with two holes, cut out of it, kind of looming around. And so, how does that fit in with the lyrics? Maybe it doesn't.
Yeah.
But who cares?
Yeah.
And that's how the song basically kind of fades out, is in that sort of spooky cemetery motif.
Mm-hmm.
But before you get to that ending, I mean, this song is just a straight up rocker, and that guitar solo at the very end, before it transitions into the spooky cemetery music, that's as good a rock and roll as you were going to hear in the early 70s.
Yeah.
Just for 30 seconds there, Black Sabbath was just plain rocking out. No bullshit, just rocking out.
Mm-hmm. It's and I think it goes to show, what underlying all this are these people, people that decide they're going to form a band, and this is how they're going to, they're going to spend their life, a lot of them, without ever getting a lot of riches and fame or whatever, especially when you're looking at music that this is not music that they grew up with, right? This wasn't music that has been inside of them. They're, in the end, what they really wanted to do was play rock and roll. And, their type of rock and roll with a certain slant, a certain feel, you want to differentiate yourself. You have to, if you're going to be, if you're going to be successful. But probably deep inside, what do they want? I need a great guitar solo, right? That it, is going to, and probably had a blast, recording this, and probably had a blast when they were performing it live, because in the end, that's what they were trying to do, is play some rock and roll.
Yeah. And any song that gets you tapping your foot or just draws a reaction like that out of you has some value. Yeah. And I suggested at the beginning of the podcast that Black Sabbath might not be my favorite band, may not be the best band that ever recorded, but I think that they're inextricably connected with the whole genre of heavy metal, and that they deserve to be kind of credited with being one of the original and quintessential heavy metal bands. And while the band itself in the 70s, and then certainly Ozzy Osbourne in the 80s and afterwards, kind of became a little cartoonish. That's the word that I've used in talking about it. And I don't think that's unfair. I don't think Ozzy Osbourne would have had a real problem with that, really. May he rest in peace. But in terms of the music, Black Sabbath had some qualities that are worth checking out. And I think that the three primary songs on this side really show the different things that Black Sabbath could do, aside from the totally schlocky Spinal Tap stuff of like their first album, and that they're worth a listen. Yeah. Black Sabbath is worth a listen. And if there's anyone out there who is willing to give that a shot, who hasn't already checked it out, I put my money on Master of Reality, side one.
Well, a great side and a great band. Certainly a band that made their mark. Whether it be on specifically heavy metal or rock and roll, but they certainly produced a good album here and a great side and a great conversation, Mike.
Sounds good. All right, Mark, we will see you next time.